ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशम तम नमाम्यहम. We are reading Swami Vivekananda's Practical Vedanta, Part 4, based upon Chandogya Upanishad, and in that Swamiji has established that the most rational religion is Advaita Vedanta religion. But then his conception of Advaita is very, very broad. He has found it in Sri Ramakrishna in a living form. And Sri Ramakrishna, by his own experiences, have said that all these forms, the dualism and the qualified monism and monism, they come as the experience of the sadhak as he progresses spiritually. So, Sri Ramakrishna's declaration is that so many faiths, so many paths. So find the operative part of that path, of that faith, and if you practice that without stopping here or there, you will reach the same goal. Now, Swami Vivekananda is explaining to us that this is the position of the real Advaita. I told you that if the Advaita becomes narrow or fanatic like the others, it is not a real Advaita. Because of the oneness which the Advaiti feels, he feels that everybody is progressing towards the same goal. The whole world, whether it knows or not, is progressing towards the same goal. The difference is of degree, not of type. And so, the concepts themselves will change when we evolve. So, let us go according to our actual position in life. There Swamiji is telling that, I am reading from this para, from the dualistic standpoint, this universe can only be looked upon as a creation of matter or force, can only be looked upon as the play of a certain will, and that will again can only be looked upon as separate from the universe. There is a God, he has a will, and from that will, the will creates this universe, and universe is made of matter or force. Thus a man from such a standpoint has to see himself as composed of a dual nature, body and soul. And this soul, though limited, is individually complete in itself. So it's an individual. It's not a reflection or a part or any such thing, it is an individual, though limited. Such a man's idea of immortality and of the future life would necessarily accord with the idea of the soul. So the soul, when it progresses, where it can reach, that is the idea. These phases have been kept in the Vedanta. So in the Upanishads we find the mention of all these. Especially in the Chandogya, Swamiji said, the spiritual evolution from the beginning can be traced. How a man does work, how a man does upasanas, lower and higher, how man conceives of the highest reality, how he realizes that. So in the Chandogya we find that the chapters 6, 7th and 8th, they only talk about the absolute Brahman and absolute life. For first 5 chapters, we have several upasanas, several ideas lower and higher about the soul and its goal, and that Swamiji is presenting here. These phases have been kept in the Vedanta, and it is therefore, Vedanta means Upanishads, not the so-called Advaita Vedanta philosophy. Advaita Vedanta philosophy is a school of thought. Vishishtadvaita Vedanta philosophy is a school of thought. Dualist school of philosophy, there are several dualistic schools of philosophy, they are schools of thought. But when we take Advaita Vedanta as a religion, we will find that man's progress and how to progress, that is the religion. And so Swamiji says that, and it is necessary. These phases have been kept in the Vedanta. That is Swamiji's definition of Vedanta in the Upanishads. In the Upanishads we find the mention of all these steps. And it is therefore necessary for me to present to you a few of the popular ideas of dualism. What popular ideas of dualism? Those which will be helpful for the man's actual growth. We are all dualists in our experience. May not be in our beliefs, but in our experience, we are all dualists. So what are the ideas of dualistic Vedanta? So that by following that operative part, we will progress. Our concept also will change, our life will change, and ultimately we will reach the Advaitic goal. That is why Swamiji says it is necessary for me to present popular ideas of dualism. According to the theory, we have a body, of course, and we have a body. We are not body, but we have a body, of course. And behind the body, there is what they call a fine body. So immediately behind the body, we don't have the soul. This is the gross body. And behind it or inside it or whatever you may like to call, there is the fine body. Fine does not mean in our normal sense. Fine means sukshma, subtler body. Subtle is called fine. So we have a fine body. We have a subtler body. Subtler means which cannot be experienced by our normal senses. The yogis can experience, the Vedantis can experience. When we grow in our experience, we can find that. But that is what the dualistic philosophy tells us, that there is a fine body. This fine body is also made of matter, only very fine. So matter, but very subtle matter, which cannot be experienced by senses. It is the receptacle of all our karma. We do some karma, the sanskar, the impression of that karma goes into the subtle body, to our mind, and that remains there forever until it is worked out. So this is the receptacle of all our karma. All this is necessary for the so-called Advaitists. Unless they exhaust this, unless they come out of this, they cannot progress. Karma Swamiji is explaining of all our actions and impressions. Every action that we do, the impression goes there. So, receptacle of karmas means receptacle of impressions, which are ready to spring up into visible forms. So that is the theory of karma. If we do something, the impression goes, and it is not a dead impression. The impression is ready to spring up again in favorable conditions, and we have to repeat that action. So these are important points, though may not be in the Advaita philosophy, which are ready to spring up into visible forms. Every thought that we think, every deed that we do, after a certain time becomes fine, goes into seed form, so to speak. Seed form, that means not manifested, that is the seed form. Gross to subtle to seed, so to speak. It is not actually a seed like the tree, so Swamiji says seed form, so to speak, and lives in the fine body in a potential form. Potential form means it can come up and become manifested again. And after a time it emerges again and bears its results. So it has to come out and bear its results. These results condition the life of man. So the results of our past actions condition our present life. Thus he molds his own life. His own life means according to our past karma will be our present life. According to our present karmas will be our future life. Man is not bound by any other laws excepting those which he makes for himself. So what karmas he has done, that defines his life. Nothing from outside. Very important theories of dualism, because ordinarily we are prone to blame society, conditions and so many things. But it is all according to our own karmas that our life is going on. Our thoughts, our words and deeds are the threads of the net which we throw around ourselves. Thoughts, words, deeds, everything is making an impression, and they mold our character, and that character expresses itself into future life, for good or for evil. Once we set in motion a certain power, we have to take the full consequences of it. This is the law of karma. Behind the subtle body, so Swamiji has explained the subtle body and the impressions remaining in that subtle body, ready to come up in future. Behind the subtle body lives Jiva, or the individual soul of man. So behind the subtle body, we have consciousness, high consciousness, that is the Jiva. That is called the soul. According to some, it is very small, like an atom. According to others, it is not so small as that. According to others, it is very big, and so on. Because people have not seen it. If they had seen it, they would not have discussed its size. If they would have experienced that, they would have understood that it is universal. It has no dimensions. But because it is theories, so some people say Anumatra, some people say not so small means equal to our body, some people say universal. So these ideas are different, but the soul is there. The Jiva is a part of the universal substance. Universal substance means universal reality. So to the extent that it is a part of that. And it is also eternal, eternally existing part. Without beginning it is existing, and without end it will exist. Then what is progress? It is passing through all these forms in order to manifest its real nature, which is purity. All the dualists, qualified monists in India, they have the firm conviction that their soul is pure. It may have invited impurity, but by nature it is pure, and to manifest the full purity, that is the goal of life. Every action that retards this manifestation is called an evil action. So with thoughts. So the judgment of ethics is not outside. The judgment of ethics is if the soul purity expands, it is a good action. If the soul purity contracts, it is a bad action. And every action and every thought that helps the Jiva to expand, to manifest its real nature is good. One theory that is held in common in India by the crudest dualist as well as by the most advanced non-dualist is that all the possibilities and powers of the soul are within it. Another thing, it is a manifestation, not actual getting anything from outside. So the nature of the soul, purity, powers, knowledge is all within. It is not expressed. It is contracted, whatever language we use. And spiritual progress means the full manifestation of the nature of the soul, which will be purity, all the powers, all the knowledge. They do not come from any external source. They are in the soul in potential form. And the whole work of life is simply directed towards manifesting those potentialities. So that is the life. So that is common, whether it is dualism or Advaitism. They have also the theory of reincarnation, the dualist, which says that after the dissolution of this body, the jiva will have another body, and after that has been dissolved, it will again have another, and so on, either here or in some other worlds. He may become devata, he may become animal, but this world is given the preference as it is considered the best of all worlds for our purpose. In this world we can struggle to become perfect, in no other world. Other worlds are conceived of as worlds where there is very little misery, but for that very reason, they argue, there is less chance of thinking of higher things there. When one is immersed in pleasure, one does not think of other things. As this world contains some happiness and a good deal of misery, the jiva sometime or other gets awakened, as it were, and thinks of freeing itself. So that is the struggle which comes. But just as very rich persons in this world have the least chance of thinking of higher things, so the jiva in heaven has little chance of progress, for its condition is the same as that of a rich man, only more intensified. It has a very fine body, which knows no disease, and is under no necessity of eating or drinking, and all its desires are fulfilled. That is the idea of the heaven. The jiva lives there, having enjoyment after enjoyment, and so forgets all about its real nature. Still there are some higher worlds where in spite of all enjoyments, its further evolution is possible. That is called the Brahmaloka. Their further evolution is possible. Some dualists conceive of the goal as the highest heaven. No, that is wrong. So what is wrong also has to be stated, and what leads to progress also has to be stated. Some dualists conceive of the goal as the highest heaven, where souls will live with God forever. That is the Brahmaloka. They will have beautiful bodies and will know neither disease nor death, nor any other evil, and all their desires will be fulfilled. From time to time, some of them will come back to this earth and take another body to teach human beings the way to God. And the great teachers of the world have been such. So that is the dualist theory, that from the Vaikuntha or Kailash or whatever, people come, take our bodies like us, and teach us how to go further. And the great teachers of the world have been such. They were already free and were living with God in the highest sphere. But their love and sympathy for suffering humanity was so great that they came and incarnated again to reach mankind the way to heaven. So that is their idea. They see such people who are perfect and yet they are men, so they have come from that place and they are teaching us. Of course we know that the Advaita holds that this cannot be the goal or the ideal. As individuals we cannot live anywhere. That it cannot be the goal of life. Bodilessness must be the ideal. Please note this. Advaita Vedanta, the idea of moksha is ashariratva. This is Chandogya Upanishad. Ashariratva, bodilessness. Bodilessness means I am pure spirit. I am only consciousness. I do not require a body to express myself. This body has bound me, and a day will come and I will be free from any sort of idea of a body. That is the goal of life. So the goal of life, Swamiji is telling according to Advaita, is that bodilessness. Not beautiful bodies or godlike bodies or heavenly bodies or subtle bodies, that cannot be the goal. because if the body has a name and form, and it will be destroyed. But I don't want the body at all. The ideal cannot be finite. In Chatussutri Bhashya, Shankara has explained this. Higher and higher lokas, more and more pleasure. Lower and lower lokas, less and less of pleasure. This comparative is one thing. But maybe higher pleasure, but pain also will be there. Must be very less like pleasure, pain will be there. So this comparative cannot be spoken of the goal of life. When there is no body, there is no chance of pain, and bliss is our nature. And so that will be the permanent bliss, not comparatively less or more bliss. So the ideal cannot be finite. Comparative is always finite. Maybe very, very great, but finite. Anything short of the infinite cannot be the ideal, and there cannot be an infinite body. Body cannot be infinite, so infinite happiness cannot be there. That would be impossible. So body comes from limitation. Body, because I have done this, I have done that, I have this sanskara, according to that body comes. There cannot be infinite thought also, because thought comes from limitation. I am this or I am that. That limited thought only produces my mind. We have to go beyond the body and beyond thought too, says the Advaita. And we have also seen that according to Advaita, this freedom is not to be attained. While talking of dualists, Swamiji said, don't stop at the goal which they propose. That is the idea. That the goal they propose is not correct, so let us proceed further. This freedom is not to be attained, it is already ours. We have to realize it. By saying it is ours, it will not do. But it is not something to be achieved. If you achieve something, it becomes lost also. Let me give an example. Let us go to our Puranas. And say, take some example, Rukmini or Subhadra. They got Shri Krishna as their husband. Now in that relation, Viyoga is definitely to happen. Now Gopis or Radha, they got Krishna as their reality. How can that go away? This is figuratively put in the book Krishna Karnamrita. A small gopi is there, young, and Krishna in play just throws her hand out and goes away. She says, you are a great hero. Throwing the hand of a small gopi or running. If you can get out of my heart like that, then only I will call you a hero. So when you experience the Lord as our reality, then there is no separation. Otherwise, if you achieve something from outside, separation is sure. That is the important point Swamiji is making here. And I illustrated it through an example. So it is already ours, we have to realize it. We only forget it and deny. We are denying. No, we are small. Perfection is not to be attained, it is already within us. It has been manifested. Immortality and bliss are not to be acquired. We possess them already. They have become ours. They have been ours all the time. So that is called bodilessness. Body means limitation. Bodilessness means infinity. And we have all these things. Nature of the soul. The question is that it is not manifested today. We have to find out how to manifest it. Swamiji is telling, if you declare that you are free, you are this moment. If you are declare that you are free, that means you have no connection with this body, you are free. You have no connection with this mind, you are free. If you say you are bound, you will remain. So the concept has to change. This is what Advaita boldly declares. I have told you the idea of the dualist. You can take whichever you like. So the dualist, by his theory, is not becoming free. He is growing. And when the concept changes, then he will become free. That is what Swamiji is presenting. The dualism he has presented beautifully, but by progress, the very concept will change. And if you have limited concept, limited will be your achievement. The highest ideal of Vedanta is very difficult to understand. Now, because we are habituated to feel ourselves as body and mind and so many ideas of dualism, it has become difficult to, even for the buddhi to conceive, it becomes difficult. And people are always quarreling about it because they get their opinions about it. And the greatest difficulty is that when they get hold of certain ideas, they deny and fight other ideas. These are ideas only. A man of experience does not fight. Take up what suits you and let others take up what they need. They are also growing, you are also growing. If you are desirous of clinging to this little individuality, to this limited manhood, remain in it, have all these desires and be content and pleased with them. If your experience of manhood has been very good and nice, retain it as long as you like, and you can do so, for you are the makers of your own fortunes. None can compel you to give up your manhood. You will be men as long as you like. None can prevent you if you proceed in the right way. If you want to be angels, you will be angels. That is the law. Angels is what the Christian term, what we call is devatas. But there may be others who do not want to be angels even. What right have you to think that theirs is a horrible notion? When they say, I will become God, I will become Brahman, horrible, horrible, not possible. You may be frightened to lose 100 pounds. Swamiji is giving an idea of miserliness of the mind. You may be frightened to lose 100 pounds, but there may be others who would not even wink if they lost all the money they had to have in the world. Different, eh? Swamiji is not talking of a rich man. Not that you are afraid of losing 100 pounds and you will not mind even if 1,000 pounds go away. No. If all the money is lost, he is not losing anything. You know the Janaka story. His guru was Ashtavakra. In the evening he would hold a discourse every day. And sadhus would attend. Janaka also would attend. And people found that if Janaka is slightly late, Ashtavakra would wait for him. So they became little disturbed. We have renounced everything and Ashtavakra does not wait for us. Once, after Janaka came, there was a shout that Mithila, the city is burning, Then the sadhus ran away to save their copiness. Janaka did not go. Then he was asked, you have nothing to lose? He said, Anantam batame vittam yasya me nasti kinchana mithilayam pradagdayam name dayati kinchana. My wealth is infinite. Rather, infinity is my wealth because I have nothing to call my own. If I say I am very rich, I am limiting. If I say I am poor, I am limiting. But my wealth is infinite. Even if the Mathura, if the Mithila city burns, nothing of mine is burned because nothing I call as mine. So that is the point. So 100 pounds lost, you are worried, and if he loses everything, he is not worried because it is not his. There have been such men and still there are. Why do you dare to judge them according to your standard? They will say impractical, foolish, he has lost everything, he is not worried, is he mad? You cling on to your limitations, and these little worldly ideas may be your highest ideal. You are welcome to them. It will be to you as you wish. But there are others who have seen the truth and cannot rest in these limitations, who have done with these things and want to get beyond. The world with all its enjoyments is a mere mud puddle for them, because it is limited. Small and big does not matter. Why do you want to bind them down to your ideas? You must get rid of this tendency once for all, accord a place to everyone. So that is the glory of the Advaita Swamiji is telling. I once read, Swamiji is illustrating it in the relative life. I once read a story about some ships that were caught in a cyclone in the South Sea Islands. And there was a picture of it in the illustrated London News. You must remember, these lectures are in England, London. All of them were wrecked except one English vessel which weathered the storm. The picture showed the men who were going to be drowned standing on the decks and cheering the people who were sailing through the storm. Be brave and generous like that. If somebody wants to progress, let him. That is miserliness of the mind. So Swami is telling, be generous like that. Do not drag others down to where you are. Another foolish notion is that if we lose our little individuality, there will be no morality, no hope for humanity. Swamiji has discussed already this point. As if everybody had been dying for humanity all the time. Only when it comes to losing individuality, we say like that. Otherwise, we are not dying for humanity. We are all selfish. When we believe in individuality, we become selfish. God bless you. That means that is not real. If in every country there were 200 men and women really wanting to do good to humanity, the millennium would come in 5 days. Millennium means Suvarna Yuga. Everybody will be happy. If there are 200 people who are really unselfish, the whole world will change. These are all talks and nothing else. The history of the world shows that those who never thought of their little individuality were the greatest benefactors of the human race. And that the more men and women think of themselves, they are less they are able to do for others. That the more men and women think of themselves, the less are they able to do for others. One is unselfishness and the other selfishness. Difference between dualism and Advaitism is important point. An unselfish person is more likely to appreciate Advaita. A selfish person finds it difficult to appreciate Advaita. Shall I give an example from the outside world? I am not praising or blaming anybody, please, on this particular point. We hear of our first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, and we had a great scholar, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, great philosopher, and he was not able to appreciate or understand Advaita at all. He is telling, you have declared 3 prizes, and generally we give the third prize first. Third prize, 10 rupees. Second prize, 20 rupees. And first prize you have given a blank envelope. That is how he compares Advaita. And Jawaharlal Nehru, in his book Discovery of India, has praised Advaita, has praised Swami Vivekananda. He could appreciate that. Now, how do I say selfish or unselfish? Anand Bhavan, a highly valued property, was given over to the country by Jawaharlal. And, sorry please, Radhakrishna's old ancestral home, dilapidated, he gave to the country. Anyway, I just want to tell you, as Swamiji is telling, unselfishness is the first quality of a spiritual life. How much unselfish you are. And that, even to appreciate Advaita, that is required. What to speak of growing into that. So all this scholasticism is of no help. You cannot appreciate, you cannot understand Advaita unless you are unselfish. That is the first criteria. And as Swamiji has shown here, the less you think of yourself, the better you grow. The more you think of yourself, the less you can do for the world. Please excuse me, I have given an example from the outside world. Clinging on to little enjoyments and to desire the continuation and repetition of the state of things is utter selfishness. So there is the selfishness. Even going to Vaikuntha is selfishness. It arises not from any desire for truth. Its genesis is not in kindness for other beings, but in the utter selfishness of the human heart. In the idea, I will have everything and do not care for anything else, anyone else. This is as it appears to me. Swamiji has presented it. I would like to see more and more men in the world like some of those grand old prophets and sages of ancient times who would have given up 100 lives if they could, by so doing, benefit one little animal. Talk of morality and doing good to others, silly talk of the present time. Swamiji is giving a noble example now. Though he is not known as a Vedantist, Swamiji finds he is the highest Vedantist. And that is, I would like to see more moral men like Gautama Buddha, who did not believe in a personal God or a personal soul, never asked about them, but was a perfect agnostic and yet was ready to lay down his life for anyone and worked all his life for the good of all and thought only of the good of all. Sri Ramakrishna was asked a question. There was a idol of Buddha in his room, and he used to talk of Buddha. So people said that Buddha did not believe in God. How you like him? Sri Ramakrishna said, why should he believe? He was God himself. So belief is an external thing. He was God himself. That is what Sri Ramakrishna replied. So, if you read Buddha's ideas critically, you will find that they are 100% Vedantic. And this is not going by the outside philosophy, again I am telling you. If you penetrate and find the ideas, and that is what Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda are telling us boldly. This is not according to the conventional ideas of Advaitism. Both sides. Inclusive is Sri Ramakrishna's or Swamiji's idea, and the so-called agnostic, who is but totally unselfish, is the most glorious person in Swami Vivekananda's ideas. I would like to see moral men like Gautama Buddha, who did not believe in a personal, who did not believe in God means he did not believe in the personal God or a personal soul. Never asked about personal soul. Soul is immortal, soul is infinite. Never asked about them, but was a perfect agnostic. That means I do not know what they are. And yet was ready to lay down his life for anyone and worked all his life for the good of all and thought only of the good of all. Well has been said by his biographer in describing his birth that he was born for the good of the many as a blessing to the many. Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. He did not go to the forest to meditate for his own salvation. He felt that the world was burning and that he must find a way. You know, his father had arranged in such a way that he will have no sorrow. But he saw that people have sorrow, that the world has sorrow. And the only concern was how to help the world to get rid of sorrow. For that he wanted to find the truth, for that he did sadhana, for that he got his realization, and for that he preached it. So the very basis of his is that not I want to get rid of my misery, but he found that there is misery in the world, and how that misery in the world shall go away, that was his noble idea, absolutely unselfish. Why is there so much misery in the world? Was the one question that dominated his whole life. Do you think we are so moral as the Buddha? The more selfish a man, the more immoral he is, straight away. And so also with the race. Swamiji is generalizing it now. That race which is bound down to itself has been the most cruel and the most wicked in the whole. Swamiji is now, once he had referred to the gross dualism of Muhammad, again he brings that point as an illustration of difference between the Buddhist and this. That race which is bound down to itself has been the most cruel and the most wicked in the whole world. There has not been a religion that has clung to this dualism more than that founded by the Prophet of Arabia. And there has not been a religion which has shed so much blood and been so cruel to other men. The Genesis is telling us, no escaping that. He is not hating anybody. In the Quran there is the doctrine that a man who does not believe these teachings should be killed. It is a mercy to kill him. And the surest way to get to heaven, where there are beautiful houris, apsaras, and heavenly maidens, and all sorts of sense enjoyments, is by killing these unbelievers. Think of the bloodshed there has been in consequence of such beliefs. In the religion of Christ, there was little of crudeness to begin with. There is very little difference between the pure religion of Christ and that of the Vedanta Swamiji has found out. You find there the idea of oneness, but Christ also preached dualistic ideas to the people in order to give them something tangible to take hold of. They cannot conceive of Advaita, let them have dualism, they will grow, then they can conceive. That was his idea. In Mohammedanism, that Advaita does not appear at all. Some people may point Sufis. Sufis are really not Mohammedan, they were Mohammedan. That is the reflection of Vedanta on them. The same prophet who preached, our Father which art in heaven, also preached, I and my Father are one. And the same prophet knew that through the Father in heaven lies the way to the I and my Father are one. That is what Swamiji has presented. How through dualism, by loving God, by helping people, we grow up. If we stick to the idea of dualism, we cannot grow. There was only blessing and love in the religion of Christ, but as soon as crudeness crept in, that could not be followed. And crudeness crept in. It was degraded into something not much better than the religion of the Prophet of Arabia. So, Swamiji is not showing mercy to any thought which is wrong, which retards the growth of humanity. But he knows the original idea of Jesus were different. It was crudeness, indeed, this fight for the little self, this clinging on to the I, not only in this life but also in the desire for its continuation even after death. This they declare to be unselfishness. This is the foundation of morality. Lord help us. If this be the foundation of morality, and strangely enough, men and women who ought to know better think all morality will be destroyed if these little selves go, and stand aghast at the idea that morality can only stand upon their destruction. So when the individuality goes, only morality comes. If you stand on individuality, real morality, limitless morality cannot come. The watchword of all well-being, of all moral good is not I but thou. Who cares whether there is a heaven or a hell? Who cares if there is a soul or not? Who cares if there is an unchangeable or not? Here is the world, and it is full of misery. Go out into it as Buddha did and struggle to lessen it or die in the attempt. Swamiji is preaching Buddhistic ideas here. That will make us grow in unselfishness, and then we can catch the Advaita Vedanta. Forget yourselves. This is the first lesson to be learned. Whether you are a theist or an atheist, whether you are an agnostic or a Vedantist, a Christian or a Mohammedan, in name, the one lesson obvious to all is the destruction of the little self and the building up of the real self. So when the so-called I vanishes, then only the real I can express. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shantam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.